Dr. Shobhita Rajagopal, she's from Jaipur. Presently, she lives in Jaipur. Dr. Rajagopal is a researcher and author in the field of social development on gender issues. She's been a former professor in the Institute of Development in Jaipur. It's a pleasure again,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Rajagopal, to have you with us. Dr. Rajagopal, how would you then describe the relationship between gender and development? Is it important for us to sort of focus on that and that it's an integral part? But what would you say about that?
Well, I think it's extremely necessary to look at gender and gender issues vis-a-vis development. And as we normally understand it, gender is a cross-cutting kind of an issue. Uh, you're talking of water. It's very essential that we talk about how women's roles map
Yeah.
out when we are talking of water. If you're talking about health, uh, I mean there are a whole host of gender issues that come into the entire framework of what kind of health needs women and men have. If you're talking about education, we've just had a conversation around that in terms of who gets what when it comes to, if you're looking at it with a gender lens, you would really see how those connections do get made. And within the larger framework of development, if we are saying that, if there is a particular scheme that comes in, and then we want to see that the benefits flow to both women and men in a more equitable fashion, then it unless we put on a gender lens, we might miss make some of the things. And in that, I think whenever we talk of gender, because it is so seeped in social relations, I think every time we need to ask this question of who gets what,
Yeah.
it's, which men, which women, and are we looking at, like I said, the benefits accruing to the right groups that we're talking about, because a large part of the development focus is on the marginalized communities. So even within the marginalized communities, you find that it would be very layered. So if we are saying that, it's good to say that this is for all women, but we all know that, women are not a homogeneous category.
Yes.
There is so much of heterogeneity, and there is also all of these divisions by caste, by class, by the intersectionalities that we talk about. So today, I think there is no sector where we cannot be not looking at gender, be it even if it is very urban infrastructure related issues. Say you're talking about roads or construction of roads, or trying to make facilities like, if you have a road, fine, but there has to be some light if you want women to be out in the public spheres. So for at every level, I feel that largely we talk about education, health, work. These are some of the more, the sectors which do get a lot of, and also I think gender-based violence. If you're talking about that, we need to really understand, where is the violence coming from, and in what are the different kinds of manifestations of violence, and how are we trying to understand it, because it is about unequal gender relations that do unequal social relations that exist within a household, which are creating some of these kind of differentiation. So one needs to unpack all of that, and if we are looking at it from a kind of a policy perspective, then it is also very essential that people who are at the policy planning level actually try and understand that how a particular intervention would go and impact, say, a poor woman. I mean,
Yeah.
she could be a poor woman, she could be a woman who's like from a purely marginalized caste, maybe if she's from an upper caste. So there would be differences everywhere.
Yeah.
So one needs to kind of really get hold of, how and have an understanding of, slightly the more the textures at that level. So I think for me, gender is a lens that I would put on every aspect.
Good morning. We are here at the Azim Premji University. Today there is a very interesting book launch. The book is called India Since Independence. It is a compendium of essays. We have with us one of the co-authors of the book, Dr. Shobhita Rajagopal. Thank you, Dr. Rajagopal, for being with us. It is such a pleasure for us to actually get an opportunity to talk to you about the work that you've done on gender. Um, we would like to start this conversation. And because this is for a wider audience, can you share a bit on your understanding perspective on what are gender issues? What do we mean by gender inequality? What is gender justice? Because all these words are very commonly being used, whether in the space of development or otherwise. So, would love to hear from you. How would you describe them?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to kind of have this conversation and share my thoughts around some of the issues in and around gender. Um, as you can understand, I mean, we are a huge, large, diverse country. When we start looking at how women and men are placed in this country, we do find that there are there is an imbalance across sectors. Uh, a lot of it is also made evident by data, which also tells us that sex ratio is in a particular way. When you look at child sex ratio, it definitely tells us that the status of girls is not the best. And also when you look at maybe health indicators, you look at education indicators, you see that there is an imbalance between what men are doing and where women are located. So when we talk about gender, largely it is about how social relations put women and men on different kind of footholds. And though at one end in our country it's always said that women are treated as devis. So there is an exalted position for women, which is always something that it's in every conversation you might find this coming up. Okay, no, the women are treated very well in this country. They are looked at as devis. But we also know that there is a flip side to it. And when it comes to access to resources and control over resources, we do find that women are not where they should be in terms of both accessing and using many of those resources. So somewhere the gender, the way the social relations are built, you do see there is gender inequality. So I think in my understanding of the kind of work that I have done, uh, I mean, in the education sector, it becomes very stark because it says that if there's a girl child and if there's a boy child, and who gets an opportunity, say, to go to a private school, it will be a boy child who might be sent to a private school, whereas a girl child might be sent to, say, a government school, because the aspirations for a boy and a girl are very different. So there is an inequality which kind of starts at a very early stage in life and it kind of builds over the years, and we see that happening. And when we are talking about, say, what is it that we are wanting, maybe when we are talking about social development, we would say that we need to see that opportunities for both men and women, for young men and young women, there should not be a differentiation. So wherever, and so the journey to gender justice is such that everybody gets an equal opportunity, and equal opportunity is something that is laid out in our constitution.
Yeah.
And there are no differences based on gender, and you know, because you're born a girl and because you're born a boy, your opportunities are different. And also the fact that to say that there are only certain things that are being that are being that fall into a woman's or a girl's lap because they are born women. I think that we need to kind of close in on some of these issues and understanding. So largely if we go back a little bit in history, so there was this Committee on the Status of Women in India report which came out in 1975, and that was the first time policy planners kind of looked at sex ratio becoming an important indicator for looking at status of women. And that indicator tells us how women are placed in any society. So beginning from there, and today, after say about 4 decades of a lot of what has happened in planning, and now, like you said earlier, and you opened up, that gender has become a terminology which is used so very easily everywhere. But I think the understanding is that how we are looking at issues of gender equality, uh, not only in terms of access to resources, control over resources, choices that you make about your bodies. Everything is coming together. Gender-based violence, maybe we'll talk about that a little later, but how all of that fits into a larger frame of social justice of development.
And are you seeing that happen? I mean, would you be able to give us a few examples on how there there is a gender lens in every aspect of development,
Well,
whether it's to do with water or
I think it's a mixed bag. Okay, if we were to look at if we were to map how women in development and kind of gender issues have kind of been in, I mean been taken in terms of policy and others, we've had some very good interventions, and more recently laws around different aspects of women's lives, one would say. But I and like we said earlier, gender seems to have become a part of a lot of government documents and policy. But when it comes to actually doing gender, I think we are falling short. Yeah. So now, if I look at the education sector, there's a lot of focus on enrollments. So if there is gender parity in enrollment, people say gender okay. Yeah, if you say that you have made toilets for girls in schools, you say it has happened. You've done gender, like you've ticked off that box. But in actuality, I think what is really happening, even if girls are educated, if they say have completed their schooling cycles, many of the challenges come after that. Many of the challenges come after. I mean, initially the challenge is maybe a post-primary. If you have to get to a secondary level, there might not be schools for girls still available, which are not too far away from their homes. That's a big challenge. Then, if you're looking at tertiary level, if the college is not located, still many of the girls may have just drop out of even seeking some kind of a tertiary education. So you find that some of these gender kind of differences continue to play out. If you look at women's health, I think large part of government policy has only looked at women and as a reproductive being,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
And if NFHS data, I know, says that even now the burden of having a smaller family or doing any kind of having a, a family planning thing in the family, the burden is on women, you know.
Yeah.
The men, it's only condom use and or contraceptive use by men, it's very very small. I mean, it's only 1% or some 2%, which is what NHS
Yeah.
data says. So you do find, whereas I would not say that things have not changed,
Mm.
but the kind of transformation that we are looking at, where women have voice, where women have choice, and where they have control over some resources. I think we still have a long way to go, and I think, as we've also said in the paper, um, I think we still rank very low in the global gender gap
Mm.
report, which came out. I think our ranking is something like we are 135th out of
Mm.
146 countries. So we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So there might be, there's still a lot of hard to reach areas where we need to put in a lot more effort. And interestingly, I worked in Rajasthan, where we have had a lot of very innovative kind of interventions by government, be
Mm.
it in the area of women's rights and even primary education. Because there was this program called the Women's Development Project, which focused on training women to become agents of change in their own villages. It was called the Sathin, largely more popularly known as the Sathin program, and where women, I mean, these were women from very marginalized communities. They were not literate, but they did such stupendous work because they realized, and nobody had ever had this conversation about their own selves and what their rights and entitlements were. But
Yeah.
once they got these inputs and became aware that my situation in my household is not god given,
Mm.
that I have the potential to change my situation in my life. They did such fantastic work. They went around looking at every issue that impacted women in their communities, be it water, be it farm work, be it why were they getting poor wages, why were health cards not made. I mean, all the issues
Mm.
that why were girls not being sent to school, why is there no woman doctor in our PHC. So they picked up a whole host of issues like that.
Mm.
That was a program that ran for, I mean, it was late 80s, I mean, mid 80s till early 90s. But a lot of women, I think, did some very, very, impressive work in and around those villages. So from there on, if we come in today, there's a lot of focus on, economic empowerment of women. But I would still, I mean, that's important, but I think we still need to have those conversations with women,
Yeah.
and also men, about what my rights are. And I don't have to be in a subordinate position in a household. I mean,
Yeah.
my contributions need to be
Right.
recognized.
Yeah.
So I think we still have to put in a lot more work.
Mm. Mm.
We have a lot of very encouraging and cases that might come up across the country.
Mm.
There was also this very well-known government initiative called the Mahila Samakhya, which was across states in India, where again women got into groups and did stupendous work.
Mm.
So I think we have all of those experiences to learn from, and we need to kind of have, if we are looking at transformation, then we need to see that it has to be social, economic, political transformation, all of those things coming
Coming
together.
together. Dr. Rajgopal, you've already touched upon interventions on ground that you've seen that has worked. Let me just continue from that.
Sure.
Would like to know from you that largely when we talk about addressing gender issues, whether it is to do with economic, social, gender-based violence, you briefly spoke about that. What, according to you, are those interventions and approaches that you've seen and you've yourself worked on ground? Do you think works and we should focus on more?
Okay. I mentioned just to kind of share a little more about some of the things that have had a long term impact on kind of women's lives in different contexts. Um, I just mentioned Mahila Samakhya
Yeah.
as one of those. So I remember, the women's groups who were part of Mahila Samakhya, they would run these Nari Adalats for gender-based kind of violence, for women who were facing a lot of violence, and that almost became institutionalized in some of these states. And the women said, okay, and I mean, and we all know that when it comes to cases of violence against women, uh, there is a certain, again, the same set of attitudes come into play of the police, the same set of I mean, even and many of the poor women don't and can't seek kind of more the legal support that they should be using. Though I do see now that there is some little support which is available from DLSA and other kind of government, from within the government system. You have one-stop
Crisis
crisis
centers.
centers. You have, I mean, earlier also we had, Mahila Thanas. You still have women's police stations. So all of that is there if women were to kind of reach out. But
Right.
I think one of the issues that does come through is, if there is some local support available, a woman can go to the next level. But at within the community, one needs to have some kind of support which comes from maybe women themselves, so that that's the first point that you're
Yeah.
seeking a support.
Yeah.
And then if 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 that group has the information, is well informed, then you can go up, say, to a police station. I mean we all know that reporting for violence has gone up in a big way, from what I could see, say maybe 2 decades back.
Yeah.
I mean, there are more women coming up and reporting. But in terms of, are they finding justice?
Yeah.
That is a big question still, because the attitudes of the police, from what we see on the ground, is that, well, there is always the push for, why don't you resolve it within samjhauta karo?
Right.
This whole attitude of, you know you can go back and try and make peace, rather than really helping out in that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
So there was also this, I've done some work around witch hunting, where we looked at several cases of women who had really been kind of treated very violently, because they were labeled as a witch. Like Diane is in local language, that's what they call. And how, and if I talk of Rajasthan, we have a very progressive anti-witch hunting law. One of the
Okay.
better ones. From Bihar was the first state to get a law against witch hunting. Then there's several other states followed. But even with that, today many of the lawmakers, they themselves don't know, that this is something that we can kind of, a woman can get some respite if a case is booked under the witch hunting law. So the police people have not been trained,
Right.
so they don't know. So they said mar pitai, they kind of
Yeah.
lodge the complaint or write the FIR on that. But I think what this has worked across the country, is that wherever there are, groups of women coming together, having the information, then they are able to negotiate a lot many
Yeah.
things more.
Yes.
So I think that focus has to be there. I mean, you do have a lot of SAGs. There's a big network of, when we talk of livelihoods. So SAG is a big model that has come up. But I think we need to do the plus plus, like
Yeah.
where you're doing economic empowerment. Yes, there's some flow of funds that they have and some financial security that women might be having, but it's not just that.
Right.
It's you need to have those additives to some of these initiatives, so that today, if a woman is facing a lot of domestic violence, then this group takes on the responsibility of
Hmm.
having conversations, trying to see what is the support that woman needs, and if it is a legal support, is it something to do with the police. And so if that happens, then I feel that we are having a more kind of holistic approach, and also vis-a-vis women's own positioning of where she's coming from. I think that's where you draw your strength from. So if
Yeah.
there is a group which just stands up for you,
Yes.
there uh, the woman does feel. And I again come back to Rajasthan, and to give an example, in 1992, when we had this the big case where this Sathan was raped, and it happened when she was on her farm and she was working, but she was a government kind of project worker, and which finally her entire struggle. And I remember going for all these night meetings, and where women would come together and said that I mean, this woman was raped by four men, and they were all upper caste men, and this woman was. And finally, her struggle led us to the prevention of sexual harassment at workplace and the Vishakha
Yes.
Judgement, and then
Yes.
later the posh.
Mhm.
Okay, so but at that point in time, I do remember that all the women said that what was happening, and the government has to take a stand.
Mm.
It cannot just kind of say that we have nothing to do with it, and the person who had suffered the kind of very violent situation, all the women came together to support.
Yeah.
So if we are looking, if we are looking at, I think the focus has to be on uh, how we can ensure that any woman who goes through a rough kind of a patch or violence or any other situation, then there is a local support group that comes up
Yeah.
to support her, or she knows that if I am having some problem, I can reach out to this group,
Yes.
and they would somewhere help me get around whatever is my problem. So I think that is something that has worked well in this country, and in Maila Samakya, in the women's development
Yes.
project, also Kudumbashree in Kerala, where though the focus is a lot more on livelihoods, but I think we do have these examples all over the country for us to pick and kind of learn from. So but I think still, we used to say this when many of us who were working in WDP. See, if when we are in the context of women, it's only when your self image changes, your social image will change. You have to feel
Interesting.
that
Yes.
I I have I'm capable of doing many
The
things,
confidence.
and you have to gain that
Yeah.
confidence. You need to have
Yeah.
information, and if you can become strong.
Right.
And if you become strong, your social image also changes.
Yeah.
So a change in self image is what will actually finally lead to a change in the social image.
Yeah.
And people might look at you differently as a strong person who doesn't take any kind of, any kind of, you can't force her to do things which she doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
And she's a person who has a choice and who has a mind of her own. I think so that uh, that works. I think if you were to have a focus
Yeah.
on that, and of course, I think everywhere, I think world over, um, women coming together has always been a strength and a strong point. Uh, Even in the women's movement and everywhere, we do talk about,
Yeah.
where how we kind of seek our power and strength from others in it.
Yeah.
So I think that model would definitely, take us a long way.
Yeah. Uh, we've also seen that the
Hmm.
very fact that a woman can get out of her home,
Hmm.
have access to a women's group,
Hmm.
collective,
Hmm.
Mahila Samakets, known
Yeah,
as
everywhere.
different names
Yeah,
across
yeah.
the country. And the confidence and the strength also comes from
From that.
that. Because she knows that she's got her allies, she's got that support that she requires. But when she moves out of that as a result of gaining the strength and confidence, she decides to sort of demand justice, especially, say, for violence against women. Do you see that structure available, accessible? Do you see that there needs to be more in that structure? And I mean the justice system, the criminal justice system.
See, I think that we have come some way when it comes to issues of GBV in terms of the legal aspects and the laws that we have. There are supportive, like prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. That is
Yes.
something that I was very much a part of, so I know how that struggle has happened. But and we have the Domestic Violence Act. Many things are there. I mean, we do have. I would say even institutions like we have the
Yeah.
National Commission of Women, we have the State Commission of Women, we have Mahila Thanas, one-stop centers. So if you were to put down that list in terms of what are the kinds of support system which are available within a government kind of framework, we a lot of things exist.
Okay.
Okay, but I think the challenges are how to make them work very efficient.
Yes.
you know
Hmm.
so I think that challenge is there. And uh, and and we also have there are a whole host of people in the women's movement. There are activists. I mean, even if there is a smallest of the support that comes from somewhere, we
Yeah.
do find that things do you know
Start
can be
moving
taken
or
forward,
progressing.
right?
Yes.
And if we are looking at justice, that
Yes.
there is some kind of justice that, I mean, many a time women just want some kind of a local, punishment to be given to
Yeah.
to somebody who's not.
Yeah. Or any
There,
form of
there is
resolve.
also there are community systems of trying to have settle cases and all
Right.
that. But because for a woman to come to a police station and or to take a legal recourse, and for a poor woman, that's something that's very far away in terms
Yes.
of how do you get there. If I'm working, I will lose wages. So all,
Hmm.
if you include all of that, then many of them don't really take it for.
Yes.
But then there are many who do also. But our justice system also, it takes too long a time
Hmm.
for somebody. I mean, I know of the struggle of Bhavari after, you know, finally, okay, we have a law, everybody knows what happened, but and three men who raped her died. Uh, but she still, and now after 27 years,
Hmm.
no, some 20 plus years, the case has come up to the High Court from a Sessions Court. And that woman is now, she was 40 years old, and now 40 plus, she's about 70 years old.
70.
It has taken that kind of time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just one case I'm talking.
Right. Yeah.
But then what happens? So if we are looking at speedier kind of justice, we have to really work very hard,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think we have some positives. There are things happening, but then there's a lot more that we need to do. And also I think continuously talking about gender, about the kind of inequalities that do exist, and reiterating the fact that women need to I mean, it's a women's right to have a choice,
Yeah.
and she can take decisions and
Mm.
things like that. So I think all of that does matter, and we need to do that continuously. And
Yes. And
that,
also set the right narrative,
yes, you
right?
set the
Therefore,
right narrative. I think
yes,
that is very, very
absolutely.
essential. Essential.
Yes.
And also, and I think in this, it's I mean, more so in the last, I think, a few, not few years, about a decade or so, it's also being realized that we need to have conversations with young men and young men and men, and on gender,
Yeah.
on all the gender inequalities that women, of course, we have to talk to, but it's also the men and boys that we need to have the conversations with, because we need to take them as allies, like you
Yeah.
said. I mean, and I think that if that done, in the kind of transformation that we are trying to look at, the kind of empowerment that we are trying to understand, I think it would add substance to, like, the
Yeah.
commitments that we are talking about.
You touched upon a very important point, and I was just wondering about that. And thank you for bringing it up, because
Right.
typically when we talk about gender, we immediately think about girls and women and their oppression and inequality. Tell us a little bit more about men and boys, how important it is to
Yeah.
sort of look at interventions and approaches with them as well when we are addressing gender issues,
Yeah.
but also the importance of the work with other gender and sexual minority community members. We've seen the transgender
Mm, mm. True.
communities and work with them. Um, just for us and our wider audience to sort of acknowledge that gender issues is
Yeah,
just
it's
not,
wider.
it's
Yeah.
wider,
Sure, sure,
it's several other community
sure,
members.
sure. I mean, I'm just recollecting that, as several years back, I must say, when we had the conversations around gender was starting, women's rights issues, everything. So when the use of gender lens in
Yeah.
policy, or any kind of policy analysis or programmatic intervention started, so I was involved in a whole host of gender trainings,
Okay.
which continue across board, but these were largely for government officials.
Yeah.
Okay. So initially, in the initial years, whenever there was a gender training, so there were, people from different departments who would be asked to go and attend this gender training. It used to
Right.
be a 5-day gender training.
Mm-hmm.
So when they would come, so all the men would say, I mean, just to kind of, I'm just recollecting some of their responses. They would say, "अरे मैडम, ये तो जेंडर पे है, आप महिलाओं को बुलाइए ना, आप आदमियों को क्यों बुलाते हैं, है
Yeah.
ना?
Yeah.
You should call more women." And in gender, and they would always be just 2 women and some 30 men. I mean, that was the proportion in the classroom. So we said no.
Yeah.
I mean, for them to understand that gender was just not conversations around women,
Right.
but we were looking at social relations between women and men,
Mm.
and how everyday, kind of behaviors, rules, responsibilities, and how they kind of tend to impact from the household to wherever you could be sitting as a policy maker. And it is those attitudes that are stuck in your mind. I mean, they go at every level. And at that time also, it was quite clear to many of us who are doing gender that how important it was to carry some of these conversations with men.
Yeah.
So So I mean, another little kind of anecdote from some of these trainings was, he said, नहीं, हमारे घर में सब equal है, मैं भी अपने wife के लिए chai bana. So this chai making was seen as a major
Yeah.
contribution
Yeah.
in
You've made
household
it.
work, that
Yeah.
I make it, and women would say, no, what is the problem? I'm very happy to cook for my family. I mean, that's what you're trained to do that. And when you started unpacking, suppose, I mean, and women say, no, I love to make roti and I love to cook this for my family, and I've been doing. So we said, okay, so I mean, your husband never says something like that.
Right.
Your male partner, um, can they also do the same thing? So, even the women would reflect. It's not like, the women were all clear about, what's happening around them. So this conversation, so I guess if we are looking at, the current kind of scenarios that do unfold around us, I think it is very essential to bring men, boys into this conversation of gender. Yeah, I think because of all the issues that we talked about. I mean, here we do have, the way the roles and responsibilities are divided. It's not to say that, I know in many communities in Rajasthan, there are women who don't go fetch water. The men do the job. It's the duty of the men to go and fetch water. But if there are other things, they might not want to do it. So what we are talking about is taking shared responsibility for anything that is happening within the household and even outside the house.
Right.
I mean, farm work, we all know that all the back bending work is done by women. All the way. I mean, 70% of farmers are women in this country. And men, whenever it comes to any automation, then finally it is the men who take over. So it's not like a woman can't, ride a tractor. And I'm told now there are a lot of, I think there is a government program where they're training a lot of women to use these drones for farming and things like that. So what I think is, especially in, areas like we are talking about, violence.
Yeah.
We need to have that conversation with men and boys. I mean, not only violence, but I guess leaving the men out doesn't help. Because if you are empowering women and they, have now, gone beyond, the given, we need to see, and many of the women who, from my experience, I can say that there was a lot of backlash for women who had, gone through a certain process of, thinking, and then they found that, the things within their households don't change.
Right. Yeah.
So no, so there is a different kind of backlash that they have to face, and now I think more and more when we are, you have wherever spaces, whichever is it, we are talking about schools, we are talking about colleges. I think it's time that we have conversations both with the girls and the boys.
Yeah.
And now maybe there is a little change where you can put them all together and have a conversation.
Yeah.
There's another, another issue which we didn't talk about so much, but there's a lot of talk on menstrual hygiene management and how do girls cope. So it's very essential that we have boys also talking about menstruation. Sexual minorities also talking about menstruation. I know of a group that works in, and many others do across the country, but they were working on WASH issues, and they also started working with sexual minorities, and they pushed the Jaipur municipal authorities to, to have those signage which says, men, women, other gender, to include all of that, and they have done that. I mean, it's small steps, but at least you're having conversations. I mean, and then you're looking at needs. I mean, you're doing interventions which are need based,
Right.
rather than I sit somewhere in in an office and I plan, okay, make these toilets like this and do something like this without asking The people who are going to be using men, women, transgenders, are on what is it that you need. I
Yeah.
think a lot of our planning just falls through because we don't even have the conversations with the beneficiaries
Right.
or the key stakeholders at that.
Yeah.
So I think we need to do that, and especially on gender, I think there is no going back on not having the conversations with men and boys. I think we
Yes.
really, really need to do that very
Yeah.
systematically, very, very systematically.
And possibly equal to what effort and intervention goes into working with
Hmm.
adolescent girls and women.
Hmm.
Right? I think
Hmm.
we are at a time when we really need to come together and again think about what these interventions should be
Yes,
with men and
yes,
boys. It might
absolutely.
not be the same,
It might not be the same. Yeah.
but then what is it that would work to bring them, I
No,
would say, into the circle?
I think we need to also understand that, I mean, if you're talking of young men and we talk of adolescent girls, they have their own set of, needs and, kind of travails that they are
Right.
facing. But equally, there are the pressures on boys are also there equally.
Yes.
So one needs to really understand, unpack, because I know from, we all know that a lot of, people from young men from poor families and more marginalized, they have this pressure of, earning a livelihood, getting a job,
Yeah.
contributing to the family. I mean, that those pressures are there a lot. Or if they, and everybody is aspiring for a government job of some kind, but government jobs are not there. So there is also a kind of, disenchantment that is
Yeah.
there. So, and also one needs to try and see, and like I said, you need to understand the needs and then do the planning.
Right.
It's not like one size fits all. It will not. It doesn't
No.
happen. It doesn't happen with women. It doesn't happen with men also.
Yes.
You know, and also, if we are looking at more kind of balanced way of, looking at what's happening within a household. So then everybody contributes, and also respect. I think this entire issue of respecting, people with,
Yeah.
different needs,
Hmm.
different orientation. I think all of that conversation. I don't know how much all of that happens in educational institutions, because educational institutions is where you get a chunk of people together at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think it's also very important for all these education institutions to start these conversations on a
Right.
regular basis. I mean, I've done some work with government colleges in Rajasthan, and I find that there is hardly a forum or a platform for anybody to come and say anything.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of girls who struggle and negotiate to come to a college from, traveling in local kind of transport, coming, they face so much harassment, so much of all of this. So things like that need to be talked about,
Yeah.
and they don't go back and tell their homes, because talk about it in their homes, because they say the moment we say this, okay, we got harassed on the way to college, the family is going to say you don't have to go to college, you have to stay at home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for answers, we need to kind of see where those answers are.
Right.
So I think there are several groups in the country who are working very systematically with having these conversations with boys and men, and I think again we need to
Yeah.
pick up and then contextualize. It's
Right.
not something like what might work in Rajasthan might work in Karnataka. We just take the learning and try and see how, what's the best fit in terms of looking at context, because in gender, context is very important. I mean, it's not just that, and like I said, one size fits all doesn't work anywhere,
Yeah.
and there's nothing like an instant anything happening instantly. It's a lot of very sustained work that actually, results in, and the thing is that, we have a large CSO base in this country, a lot of NGOs doing very different kinds of exciting work. But when it comes to scale, we know, if you go through a government system, you can reach out to, like,
Yes.
even if it's schooling, education we talk about. I mean, that scale is something that none of us can ever reach,
Yes.
think of reaching.
Yes.
So I think some of these areas are something that we need to be continuously engaged in.
Yes. Throughout our conversation today, you have very well described not only about gender and gender issues, but also how does one go about addressing some of these issues. I would take away from our conversation today that you said while it has to be need based, contextual, there has to be variations because of the diverse geographies that we have in
Yeah.
this country. And to keep all of that in mind, however, at the same time, you reiterated the fact that um, there there is intersectionality. There needs to be gender lens in every issue that is getting addressed. And not only that, in your previous point, you've reiterated the fact that gender is about different forms of gender and groups. It cannot be only about girls and women. And for me, across all these points that you've discussed, you've really said that it cannot be seen in isolation. And if it does, then one doesn't see the direct connect to development
Yeah.
or any kind of progress, right? And with that, Dr. Rajagopal, I would want to conclude our conversation today that what would you want to tell the younger generation? Whether they are in education, they are in their career, jobs, entrepreneurs. Um, what message would you want to give them about these issues that we've spoken about today?
I think one of the things which I would really like to kind of reiterate is that one, I think when it comes to choices,
Yeah.
when you make your own choices, then you have to. I mean, there is a fair bit of struggle in that. You could be coming from maybe a more affluent background, or maybe you're coming from a more, not so affluent
Yes.
background. I mean, we have to accept that, if it's a young man or a young woman, there will be a lot of differences, but one needs to kind of work around it,
Right.
negotiate it, take support. I
Yeah.
think that is what is very essential. Talk about things, take support, and I'm sure there would be somebody, some forum, some group that can help you through, because I also see a lot of young people who have too much of mental pressure, dealing with many of these
Yeah.
things, and also giving up on and also have, I mean, I know from my experience of working in with rural communities that the young men and women have a lot of aspirations, but the avenues are very limited.
Yeah.
So it's about how we try and see that if we do get on to something which we want to do, then we sustain and don't kind of fall back, because the pull factors are also there immense.
Yeah.
Like we were having this conversation that even in this university, a lot of people come from very diverse backgrounds, and how do you continue to um, look for what you are wanting to do in your
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
life. And and also, I think arm yourself with a lot of information. I mean, if there is something that you need to, and also, and looking at, you must know your rights and entitlements. I think that is very, very essential. It's not like, today somebody is facing violence, it is happening somewhere far. It could be happening right next to you.
Absolutely.
It could be happening
Yes.
in the same lane, in the same
Yes.
whatever, even in the same house.
Yeah.
So I guess gather a lot of information. And today, because we are so very digital kind of framework that we work in, I guess one needs to have all the kinds of skills that you are looking at. But I think have confidence in yourself. That is one big this thing. And try to look for support systems, um, and try and pursue. I mean, it's for a lot of rural young men and women. There's still they have to negotiate a lot.
Yeah.
So it's about how do you get them to say that okay, uh, you know they need to have that confidence to get through. So
Yes.
largely that. And um, I think everywhere they can be mentors of different kinds.
Yeah.
Like school. I know. I mean, I've experienced a lot of a lot of teachers who have helped out a lot of students wanting to do different kinds of
Yeah.
things. So teacher mentorship is something that one can look at, talk to somebody. But I know many a times it is also very difficult. It is not so easy. But I guess it's about taking that kind of, quantum jump in many ways. But I think having confidence, negotiating skills, I think that is something that
Yeah.
all of them need to kind of have. And also have information about your rights and entitlements. I think largely, if you arm yourself with that, we can look at like better
Yeah.
kind of scenarios.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Rajagopal. It
Thank
was
you.
such a pleasure having
Yeah.
this conversation with you,
Thank you.
and with the words of confidence, strength, and we wish all of this for all those who
Yeah, absolutely.
are struggling, but also might not be struggling, but looking at aspirations.
Yes.
We wish you all the very best
Thank
in
you.
your future endeavors, and
Thank you.
hope to meet you soon.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.